I'm focused on this theory cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello, this is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Teen News. Hello. Welcome to Black Teen News. I'm your host, Christina. And today we're going to be talking about the election, of course, and some crazy stuff that has still come out afterwards. And the response from the liberals are still getting everything wrong. And it's kind of funny. It's kind of sad. And we'll keep on talking about it. I have not talked to you guys since Wednesday because I had a Comic-Con to get to, a Motor City Comic-Con to be exact. And Thursday I did my setup. And on Friday we had the show, on Saturday, and then on Sunday. So I've had a full busy weekend and did not want to take any more time off to kind of sort of recover from my weekend because I was anxious to talk to you all. I'm a little disheveled because I had to there's an issue with my laptop, so I had to switch to my sister's laptop. So I was setting everything up and getting, my equipment and everything together. So that's why I'm a little late. Try not to be late. Thank you, Kit Kat. I appreciate it. The compliment. Thank you for being here. Thank you for those of you watching live. And a lot of you, there's a big uptick in the last episode that I streamed. A lot of people went back and watched that. And I'm sure with the election coverage, it just kind of started coming into everyone's view. Someone named Facebook user didn't pop in, at least on my end. I don't know if it's just because I signed up into everything, but I don't see your name on Facebook. But he's picking amazing people. That is true. Trump is picking some good people. We're going to talk about Susie Wiles is going to be his chief of staff, and so she said from RIP that she's going to control access to him. And I think that's a good thing. You don't want some of these really, really alt-right nutty people getting access to him like they did in like the primary season. So that's good if there's going to be some more discipline to how this White House is run. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about some of his picks. New border czar. We'll talk about that. I'm a little concerned about who's going to be taking over Mitch McConnell's spot, though, because I don't like the names that are coming up that people are kind of pushing. It looks like it's going to be Senators Scott, but I don't know. And not Tim Scott. I'm talking about Senator Rick Scott and Mandy from Louisiana. I don't know why your name isn't popping up, Mandy, on Facebook. I don't know why it's not. I don't know if everyone else can see your name, but I just can't see your name in the comments. It just says Facebook user. So thank you for being here today, Mandy. Rick Scott, it looks like, is maybe going to be the one who's going to be the Senate Majority Leader. But I don't know. He didn't really, when he had a leadership position during the midterms, it didn't work out so great. And then there's like red flag laws, and he was really squishy and didn't really defend the heartbeat bill and stuff that DeSantis signed. And I don't want someone in leadership who's going to have like some moral cowardice. I want someone savvy and great at their job. And I didn't always like McConnell, but he did stand on business with those judgeships. So we'll see. There's obviously more than 3 people in the Senate. I don't know why these are the 3 names that are floating around. And well, there's only like 3 names to be floating around, but I know there's more to it than we might be thinking. I want some strong liberty MAGA people who are going to do it. people are going to have to fundraise and push agendas and help with whipping votes and, all kinds of different things. But I'm not sure that Rick Scott is the person for that, but it looks like he's going to take that because, I don't know, Charlie Kirk is really pushing it. Elon Musk is really pushing it. And I don't know. It's probably going to be Rick Scott. It's probably going to be Rick Scott. Hopefully they just make better decisions than they have in the past. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. And we'll get to that and some other things as well. But before we jump into everything, I encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate because it does cost a stream or my website, all the good stuff. So again, support. I very much do appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. I think I appreciate, I had a lot of text messages and some of you messaged me after the election and just thanked me for what I do in my content. I thank you guys for watching and for sharing because social media has been really trying to, take away my voice. But you guys, pushed out, especially like stuff during the height of this election that I felt was really important information for people to know, like, especially like why as a Christian, I can't support Kamala Harris, even though Trump wasn't like the perfect person, for evangelicals this time around. I guess he never was, but particularly this time, he's really disappointing a lot of evangelicals. But I'm like, Kamala has expressed religious bigotry, and I don't mean just kicking Christians out of the rally, at a flip of a moment of terrible judgment. But when she was in the Senate and they were trying to confirm people and she's asking questions, basically engaging in religious tests, and how she wanted to make Christians, participate in abortions by not having any kind of exemption, which is very strange and just evil. I was trying to think of a more elegant word than evil, but we'll just call it what it is. And her opposition to the 303 creative case ruling and other things just would make things really bad for Christians and persecution. And there were lots of reasons not to support her. I did the 50 reasons video and so on, and I did the debunking video with different Trump hoaxes, and I'll have to make more, I guess, hopefully, to put the minds of people at ease across the country, because they just think, oh, there's this terrible felon who told people to drink bleach and loves neo-Nazis who's sitting in the White House, and those things are not true. I mean, he was convicted of a felony, but we all know if you know the details of the case, you know how stupid it is that he got that conviction. And every time they try to rub it in his face and rub it in our faces, it just makes me want to defend him more, because they tried to put him away for something really stupid. They wanted to put him away for something really stupid, and nobody even got fired when, Joe Biden droned some kids and leaving Afghanistan. So it just makes people defend him more. So I'll be making more content, continue to make content on top of the lives and our conversations that we have every day. And so I appreciate you guys for sharing that stuff, but also for those of you who go the extra mile. And if you can support in that kind of way, God bless you. But Black Tea needs to keep growing. I'm glad for the impact that I did have in whatever decisions people may have made about the election, because in this positive result, I would say it's a positive result, even through my times of frustration or whatever. But it was still, I think, very apparent that Kamala was, or even what is Joe Biden, that they'd be worse options for the country and terrible for the country. But we're still going to have to push out more content and keep telling the truth, because if you recall what life was like 2017 to 2020, the media was insane with lie after lie after lie about Trump. And they've been taking basically a vacation for the past 4 years and have been arms of the Democratic Party. And they're going to be back on their game. I'm sure their ratings will go up and they'll appreciate it, and they'll be all justice warrior. We have to defend the country. Democracy dies in darkness, etc. And we'll have to be there setting the record straight, because even now they still can't understand why they've lost. There's been much commentary on sexism and racism and misogyny and all kinds of garbage. And we got to stand up and say, you don't understand this country. So let me lay out the facts. And that's what I'll continue to do. And I appreciate that you guys are on that journey with me. You guys can also support by checking out different merchandise that's available at blacktnews.com. Someone had told me in a comment on a video, like they hope that I get the result that I voted for. And so it made me think of this shirt that I had made around the first time Trump was president. And it was like, I voted for Trump and all I got was like historic peace deals, no new wars. Has gas under $2, a tax cut, and it ends with this lousy t-shirt. So that's still available on blacktnews.com and in other content. I'll have to use their comment and make a little commercial. And by the way, I couldn't really post a lot and make a lot of content or whatever while I was at the Comic-Con and stuff. But one thing I was doing, I was getting a lot of traction on a TikTok video I did about election night. And people were leaving comments that were sexist and racist. They don't know that they're sexist and racist. They don't acknowledge it, but just someone left a comment that said something like and it was with me and two of my sisters, and I mentioned that one of my sisters worked for the Trump campaign, and they said, I bet you guys have white mothers, have a white mother. And I said, if we did have a white mother or a white father, there'd be nothing wrong with that, because people are just people. But the answer is no. Our parents are Black, which my mother recently passed away, which you guys know that if you've been watching me for a minute. But no, don't have white parents. But since it means so much to you, I just wanted you to let you know that we are in fact Blacker than Kamala Harris. And I didn't mention this in the comment, but we're also Blacker than Barack Obama as well. So we might be a little light skinned, but parents are both Black and stuff. So my dad had a grandfather that could pass, and just a little light, that's all. But again, people are people, and it's amazing how much racism the left is really diving into after this election loss. They continue to lose their minds. And it's funny how much finger pointing there is with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and whose fault it is. Like, could they get their message out? Did they have enough time, etc.? And the reality of the situation is people didn't like Kamala Harris, and she was too left wing, and there was no way to undo all the crazy stuff that she did in her past, the crazy stuff that she said. And I've seen some left-wing people make think pieces on TikTok and saying, oh, Donald Trump, he stuck with his base, and Kamala Harris was running around with Liz Cheney. It's true she was running around with Liz Cheney. That was a mistake. But because she appealed to no one. She appealed to no one and was a repellent to both sides. But Donald Trump wasn't all in, his base. The most Trumpy thing that he's done is double down on the mass deportations and all that stuff. But he's been upsetting really, really deep conservatives, especially on the pro-life issue, for the past 2 years. And if you've been following me, you know that. And so it's not that he was so pro-Republican, I'm going to do this for my base, because he's been attacking, even in the primary, he attacked from the left on things like entitlements and so on. So he's been thinking about the general election for 2 years, and he didn't want to even do a primary. He literally did not want to do a primary, and he was really pushing to set himself to win, in all kinds of different ways that we've covered at the time. No point in rehashing it all right now, but but there was a primary, but he was thinking about general election the whole entire time. So he was running for general election the whole entire time. Kamala Harris, she was trying to get to the middle, but she had all this baggage from the past, and say, well, you wanted to stop fracking and stop deportations and do that. What do you do with all the stuff that you said? And the best answer she had was, well, that was 5 years ago. If you contrast that with JD Vance has a good answer to, hey, you said all this crazy stuff about Donald Trump, and now you're his running mate. How do you square that circle? And he said, I watched Donald Trump. He proved himself. He proved me wrong. And he had a great answer to that. He had a fantastic answer to that. And it's a good thing that he picked them. It is such a good thing that he picked JD Vance, because nobody else on the short list can do interviews like JD Vance did. Nobody, none of them. He hit a home run with JD Vance. And I was concerned at first with like, is this a shot in the foot because he has all the stuff that he said about Trump, but he explained it so great that he was able to overcome that. It was a great move. It was a great move. It was a good thing he listened, because he could explain MAGA and policies and stuff better than Trump could. And, he was a really normal guy. And he's with the top ticket, JD Vance was the only one who ended up with a positive favorability rating. So, we'll see what else happens, but his future looks pretty bright, you know, all things considered. He was a great choice. But he could explain his change. Kamala Harris like made no effort to explain her changes, and she kept saying my values haven't changed, and to say that was 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago when you wanted to run for president, and now you are running for president. So and even if she had rhetoric and tried to explain all the ways that she changed things, she still had a pretty serious record. You can't say, well, Trump wants to take your guns, I don't want to take your guns, when you are still pitching, for assault weapons ban, whatever the heck you even mean by that. When you literally tried to change our Second Amendment, to change the reading of it so it didn't, you sign an amicus brief stating that you don't have a right for a private use of a firearm and it's only for militia. And if the conservative court didn't stop you, we wouldn't be able to own handguns. Like, we wouldn't have a right to it. Like, maybe they would decide that on a state to state level, but you wouldn't have a right to it. So you can't just forget about those certain things and just throw it in the air and be like, oh, well, she said some things, now she's changed her mind. No, she's tried to ruin our God-given right that's affirmed by the Constitution, which, by the way, I had some liberals that were upset because I call it a God-given right. And like, did they teach you that in Bible school or Sunday school? Like, have you read any of our founding documents before? Like, you okay. I'm sorry that God-given offended you, but it just means that these are rights that we come into existence with, that they're not given to us. The Constitution doesn't give us our rights. They affirm our rights. Like, go take a civics class. And these people voted, for crying out loud, and are upset with the result. So anyway, she was so far left, and she couldn't run away from that. I saw a lot of people are saying Kamala Harris did the best that she could in the short time that she had, and that makes me annoyed, because the fact that this was a short election was probably the benefit for them. They thought that was going to be great for them, because Joe Biden had a basement campaign during COVID that he got away with. He didn't go out much or whatever. It was he's basically in the basement the whole time and doing Zoom stuff, and didn't have to go a lot of different places and whatnot and travel and do all these rallies or whatever. And I'm sure Kamala would have liked to do the whole sprint thing. The first 40 days was like a 107-day campaign. First 40, she did not even have any interviews. And I think the 40th day was when she had that interview with Dana Bash with Tim Walz. So wasn't even alone. And then her next interview wasn't even like on a major network. It was with some local network from maybe Pennsylvania. And it was so bad. The Trump campaign said, this is our new ad. And they just posted the whole entire interview without making any cuts. So, it's bad. And they did that more than once. We're like, here's our ad. And it's just an entire Kamala Harris interview. So, on Bill Maher, someone was saying like, oh, we didn't have enough time. She didn't have enough time. He's like, no, I think, first of all, she's the vice president. People ought to know her. But, he said, I think people got to know her and they just didn't like her. People crying and upset about her getting such a raw deal. People knew that she was unlikable for the past 4 years. That's why they hide her most of the time. That's why they've had to do multiple reboots with her. That's why she had to drop out very early in the 2020 campaign. So people pretending like she should have won, and like, it's so crazy that she didn't. It's insane. They got the dream candidate that they wanted. They obviously wanted Donald Trump to be the nominee. They wanted to be able to get to do all these convictions. They wanted to be able to call him a felon, and they did. And they still bring it up, and they bring up January 6th and all that other kind of stuff. They still push it, and it still wasn't enough because it's just the atmosphere for a change election. People aren't happy with economy, and people aren't happy with the border and all the stuff that Biden and his administration did. And even though she's not the president, she's still, kind of the incumbent while not really being the incumbent. And she couldn't run away from that. So that was going to be hard enough. But the issue really is that she's far to the left. She's too far to the left. And so all these leftists are like, well, she wasn't left enough and she ran to the middle. She did try that because she's trying to win independence and assuring everyone that we're going to get back to normal. But they promised us normal when Joe Biden ran a couple years ago, and we didn't get to normal. We got to gender affirming, all this kind of crazy stuff, and open borders, etc. We didn't get to normal. So we got kids protesting on college campuses, locking in staff and ripping down posters of hostages that Hamas took. We didn't get back to a normal. So her pretending like she's going to be the normal when she is just like the radicals that make the country crazy. They weren't going to pick her. They weren't going to pick her. So it's just, everyone can say stuff in hindsight, but that's really the reality. The country is so red now. It's really red. And I'm gonna bring up something pretty interesting. Now you guys know that I hated Trump's debate with Kamala Harris. I hated it. He did such a bad job. But he didn't do there were moments where he did all right or whatever. And so one of the things that he mentioned during the debate is that, and it was a report that had just come out from CNN, that on an ACLU form, Kamala Harris wrote that she wanted our taxpayer dollars to fund transition surgeries or gender affirming care. I don't know if they're surgery, but just gender affirming care for illegal detainees. So people who illegally cross the border, there are detainees that we were going to pay to make sure that they had like transgender care. And that was something, it wasn't a yes or no question. It was something that maybe it was a yes or no question, but she actually wrote like in the affirmative and wrote down her thoughts and her feelings. And when you become a candidate, you get all these different surveys that you fill out. And so she filled out stuff, and she would go, I don't know how much she's like ideologically driven in this stuff and is actually rooted in being this deep of a radical, or if she's just, she's from California, maybe that's who she is or whatever, or if she's really trying to stand out by appealing to that base who are very passionate. And whatever the reason, she went hard on all that stuff. You ask her a question about fracking, day one, you're gonna end it, yeah. Deportation's gonna end it, yeah. You're gonna end detaining people, yeah. You're gonna get rid of the guns on day one, like, yeah, we're gonna mandatory buybacks, yeah, it's mandatory. Yeah, she just went as hard as she possibly can on the left with this stuff. So anyway, Donald Trump brought that up at the debate, and it was like a small kind of moment with so much stuff going on. Like people remember her baiting him with the rally comment, and I was so upset about that and other moments at the debate. But when Donald Trump brought that up, people out in the world were like, he's lying. Like, that is so ridiculous. Like, that can't be true. That was people's reaction to it. So no matter how you felt about the debate, and I had a lot of feelings about it that I reacted to very quickly as it was happening. And I guarantee you, if there was a camera on my face as I watched that debate, I would have been viral in a lot of memes, because I was acting a fool watching it. I was distressed. Funny enough, that was like, I'm really invested in him, in how bad he's doing. So I really, 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 really obviously want him to win and want her to lose. But I wonder if someone in his camp at that point in time was like, light switch on. Because sometimes people want to run away from these cultural issues that they feel like they're not hitting. So there wasn't really a focus on the transgender stuff before, but I wonder if someone in the campaign was like, okay, this is crazy, and I'm glad you mentioned it, but it's so crazy. Her people on her team, like the left, think this is absurd. They think you made this up because it's so crazy. And it does sound like something that's made up, like a caricature of the left, but they are. You can't write something as ridiculous as they are. When Babylon B makes some kind of article or whatever, it's like prophetic. Eventually, it will come true. It's so ridiculous. So I wonder if someone in the team was like, "Wait a second, they don't even think it's so stupid that they don't even think it's real." So we have to push back and show them that this is real. We have a sweet spot right here. We got a sweet spot, guys. And then they started making ads. They invested hundreds, like at least over $100 million on a particular ad dealing with this particular topic. And so we showed it on the show. I think the version that was revamped with Charlemagne, but it was the ad that was said, Kamala Harris is for they them, Trump is for us. And I'm like, that's pretty bold. But then we watched through it together, and then I rewound it back and I said, they are specifically targeting this toward men, but also I think black men too. Like this, you start off with Charlemagne, all the crazy kind of transgender stuff, like we're all white. And it just seemed like something that they had that in mind when they were putting it together. And so come to find out, that ad was one of their absolute most effective for flipping people to Trump. And 60 Minutes talked about it last night. I don't know if it was last night, maybe it was Saturday, whatever, but this weekend, noting that particular ad, they spent a lot of money on that ad to show the Democrats as being out of touch. And if the first version they had didn't have Charlemagne on it, and they were playing it during football and other stuff like that, and Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club, went on his show and was like, "Man, that was an effective ad because like I don't want my taxpayer dollars funding transgender surgeries or whatever." And not only was it not just a UCLA ad or CNN talking about it, they had video of Kamala Harris on some kind of event. It's some kind of event talking about how she made sure that prisoners got their transgender care. And so people can hear her in her own words. So once they were able to really just double down and nail her down for how radical she was, it was pretty much over. I mean, plus, he got shot and people didn't like all the lawfare stuff against him. All that played a role, certainly. And, just Trump getting up, fight, 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 that masculine energy that he's putting out while Kamala's trying to do her Kamala thing. And it's not even like a good, like, you know, ethnic bomb, like the pull your boots up, like she was just like soft and confused. And she just never had the it factor to prove that she would be some kind of competent leader and someone that people can stand behind. And it kills me that people try to make it seem like people won't stand behind women. No, it's just we just want to stand behind someone that we feel confident that they can lead. And it's not her. It just wasn't her. So they had a gold mine with that particular ad and that particular issue. And I saw a TikTok that I have to respond to. It's really long, so I'm not going to play it for you guys. But someone's started off, and it got a lot of views on it. And it said, it was a mistake for the Democrats to focus so much on the women's issues. And their reasoning was that women's issues don't affect everyone. Now, the reason why that's a crazy statement to make is because when they say women's issue, they exclusively mean abortion. They exclusively mean abortion. They don't mean other stuff. First of all, the abortion issue, some people like to not think about it, or is it affecting them? The abortion issue is a human rights conversation, and it goes deeper, like about bodily autonomy, and it goes deeper as far as when do we get human rights? Because if you're arguing that someone doesn't have a right to unalienable rights until they are wanted, then that questions, do any of us have real rights that are God-given or natural? If we have to meet some kind of qualifying factor to obtain them. So one way or another, it does affect everyone because everyone has been inside of a womb before, you know, and fathers have children. They're not just the mother's child, and they are powerless when their child is killed, So there's just a lot of ways that it does affect everyone. But the real issue is that they don't really care about women's issues. You don't think women care about whether or not they can feed their kids? Like how much milk and eggs and butter is? Like you don't think women care about those things? That's a woman's issue. You don't think women care about their children's education and whether they are going to have kids trapped in an inner city school, or whether, Trump and Republicans are talking about offering school choice. You don't think they don't want to take that option with the school choice? You don't think how your kids are going through school and they're getting educated is a woman's issue? It seems pretty insane to me that you can't think beyond the scope of just, are you going to be able to unalive your offspring? There's more things that affect women. And of course, those things also affect men that I just mentioned. But if we want to get specific about women's issues, how many times did you hear Kamala Harris going around talking about boys in women's sports and in their locker rooms and in their spas and in their women's shelter and in their prisons? She doesn't talk about those things because she's on the side that wants to make sure that a serial child rapist can go inside of a woman's prison. And I'm not kidding. There was a nominee for some kind of position in a higher court that was a judge that, made sure that serial child rapist could go in the women's prison and stuff. And those are the kinds of people who are promoted within the Biden-Harris administration. So what? You don't think it's a woman's issue? We don't want more stories like what Riley Gaines had to go through, where she ties with a boy and they tell her, well, you can get your award in the mail. We're going to focus on Leah here. We don't want that to happen. We don't want to have situations with like the UPenn swimmers where they basically say, well, we can get you guys the help that you need to comply, if you're uncomfortable with this, but this is going to happen, and deal with it. We don't want women to feel intimidated in their own spaces that should be safe for them. We don't want these boys taking away awards and scholarships from them. But Kamala Harris doesn't care about that. When they talk about women's issues, they exclusively mean abortion. She went around the country telling lies about Amber Thurman and how she died, saying it was pro-life laws and women aren't getting miscarriage care. And Amber Thurman died after complications of the abortion pill after she aborted her twins and she got sepsis. And maybe she didn't get, allegedly there was malpractice there with the hospital not treating her, but that's not because of pro-life laws. Because one, if you're in some kind of life-threatening situation, you can get the medical care to a woman to preserve her life. But two, the lives of the twins were already passed, so there's no law that would prevent a D&C from happening at that point. So the pill that they claim is safe and effective and they want you to be able to go into a Walmart and pick up or whatever is the thing that ultimately ended in her demise. If there was a national abortion ban, she'd probably be alive, and so would her two twins. But she went around the country lying about Amber Thurman, constantly having her name in her mouth. But how many times have you heard her mention any of the victims who were killed by illegal aliens who crossed over during her watch? I haven't heard it. I also haven't heard her really address and apologize for what happened. I've heard her shift the blame to Donald Trump because he didn't want a bad bill signed like 3 years after the fact. So don't come at me with this woman's issue crap, because you only mean abortion. And here's the thing about that. Most people find abortion to be pretty abhorrent. That doesn't mean that they won't allow it to be. There's plenty of people who obviously want it to be legal, but they say, I would never have one myself. And they say things like, "Oh, well, no one's getting an abortion willy-nilly. Nobody wants to have an abortion." They have all these qualifiers, whatever, when they talk about it, because they know it's in reality they are taking the life of a human being. So that's why they don't want it to be like, oh, someone's just getting them to get them. Nope. Even if it is morally complicated, that doesn't make it right because you feel bad. But anyway, a lot of people in this country, they feel like it should be available, but the country does not want it to be available after viability. Most Americans don't want it to be legal after 15 weeks. And Kamala Harris, she didn't support any limitations. And that's pretty much the Democrat position, is have no limitations. And they'll try to skirt by it by saying, well, we just want Roe v. Wade restored. Well, the Dobbs decision, Alabama was trying to protect, was it Alabama, or was it Georgia? Which state was it in? Or was it Mississippi? The Dobbs decision, whatever, they were trying to protect, if someone knows, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm confused all of a sudden, all that, but they were trying to protect a fifth, I think it was probably I think Alabama was the IVF case. I'm pretty sure it was Mississippi. Someone could fact check me, whatever, or just correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But they were trying to protect babies at 15 weeks. And under Roe v. Wade, that wasn't possible. That's why they clashed, and it ended with Roe v. Wade falling. So Kamala Harris is saying, I don't think on a federal level that we should allow children to be protected if they're under 15 weeks, certainly. But most Americans believe that babies should be protected at 15 weeks. She's out of step, even on this abortion issue. Ben Shapiro, he debated like 25 Harris supporters on Jubilee and he did a prop saying that her abortion position is indefensible. And guess what? No one really defended it. They want to talk about the position in general. But Kamala Harris's position is basically no limitations. And she went beyond that and said that there should be exemptions for Christians. That's crazy. She's the one who's out of step on this issue. So even if people believe it should be legal, there's so many parameters that people want on it, especially after 15 weeks or after viability. So her going as hard as she did on the issue, the nonstop commercials, the fear mongering, no, it did ultimately end up making you have win, especially after codifying it in the Constitution in places like Michigan and other states. So now it's a state issue. So Donald Trump has protected like the federal people who's ready for stuff. And you got to debate it amongst yourselves. But they tried so hard. They tried to make it Rovember and stuff, when she's the one who's out of step. My sister said she saw someone on Twitter who started actually looking at, after the election, mind you, started looking at what Donald Trump was saying about abortion. He said, wait a second, to me, this seems really reasonable. And then people in the comments like, no, he's lying. He's lying when he says he's not going to do a national ban. He's lying. He's lying. He's lying. And to me, that's, I would, I don't want anyone to lie, but I would hope that he has a change of mind and change of heart as someone who wants to see it banned on a national level. But to me, it's so insane that they would lie about this so much, because people can go look at what he said and make their own decisions or whatever. But Donald Trump has been at odds with his base on this issue for a minute and had to fight and really did some disrespectful stuff to be frank, to the pro-life community, like at the convention, because usually people get to read, the platform and they talk about it and all kinds of stuff. They're like, you can't have phones, you can't have cameras, you can't. And they had people like following the pro-life people in the room, and they were trying to control like who even got to go there and be on the committee and look at that stuff. And they had the papers marked with different numbers, so if someone took a picture, that someone would be able to see like who's the one who leaked it. They pushed it through, and they're like, you guys don't have the numbers. They were really rude, and it was really disheartening. And at the end of the day, when people were asked about it, like the GOP was just kind of like, where were they going to go? They got no option still. And it's true. It's true. They didn't have, I mean, they always could have stayed home and did nothing, but the reality was either he was going to win or Kamala Harris is going to win. And nobody wanted to be Kamala Harris. Nobody wanted to be her. So at the end of the day, they went with Trump, even if they were mad at him. They went with Trump because she's still worse. She was the one who was out of step, even on the issue of abortion. People do not want people to be able to have abortions in the third trimester or late in the second trimester for any reason whatsoever. And I know people will say, well, women aren't doing it for no reason whatsoever. People still have them electively for reasons that are beyond some kind of medical emergency, even beyond some kind of tragic situation where the baby might have some kind of diagnosis that they can live with, but you just don't like. People will have late-term abortions because of, same reasons they get them earlier, because of job situation, relationship issues, maybe they just found out they're pregnant and so on. People don't want it to be backup birth control, especially really late. Now, I don't want it. Gestational ages to me don't make any sense. I'm not going to get on a rant about that today. I know people like my rants, but I'm not going to get on a rant about that today. But yeah, it was a bad move trying to make the election about abortion. But they're so in their own mind and they're so in their own feelings that they just couldn't see straight and they couldn't think straight. And it was only about that, and they weren't listening. And I've said this repeatedly. Some people want to feed their kids rather than kill them. And it's amazing to me that there are people out there, women, saying things like, you care more about gas prices than you do abortion. Well, I would like to think that everyone fills up their tank more than they have abortion. I would like to think that's the case. I would like to think that you buy more eggs than the amount of embryos that you destroy. I would like to think that's the case. Okay? Most people don't have to deal with this issue ever. Ever. And most people wouldn't deal with it ever. But it's incredible that there's people writing stuff about how their daughters are crying. There was one woman who said that their daughter was upset and crying. It's like what they were 12 and they said, what if I'm raped and can't get an abortion? And it's like, ma'am, you live in California. Like, calm down. You live in California. What do you think is happening? There's so many things that I've liked that I want to share with you guys, and I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to start. I was liking a lot of stuff and bookmarking it. And again, I had to, here we go. Here's the thing I'm talking about. And again, I apologize. I had to switch out my computer, which I was, getting ready to film stuff on, and at the last second. Okay.
So on election night, I went to pick up my daughter from water polo practice, and she's 12, and she got in the car and she was crying. And I said, did someone punch you? Like, water polo is a rough sport. I was like, did someone hit you? Did the coach yell at you? What happened? And she said, Mom, Trump won. Trump's going to win. And what if I get raped and I need to have an abortion? This is from a 12-year-old, my 12-year-old daughter. And so it was really a reminder of how scary this time is for people, and how important it is for Democrats to have strategies, both at the state level and the federal level, to make sure that we can continue to protect people's rights.
So again, I don't think abortion should be a states' rights issue. Personally, I'm not going to get to a big conversation about that today, but that's what it is right now. If you are in, this is Representative Katie Porter. If you are in California, you can go get your abortion. You can go get your abortion. But it wigs me out. First of all, if that's a fear of your 12-year-old, that is, I mean, it's not like it can't happen, but Gosh, what a terrible thing to be on the mind of a 12-year-old. And I just wonder what kind of information she's consuming, that is like a real visceral fear, if this is a real story at all. But that's insanity. That's insanity. Also, one way or another, when people talk about the issue of abortion, in this particular grim scenario that she's talking about, or people have them consensually, the baby exists. So there's a lot of parents who've said, I'm supporting Kamala Harris because of abortion rights, and I want for my daughter or whatever, and so on. I'm like, you're really fighting hard to kill your grandchild, to make sure your grandchild doesn't make it into this world. It's so bizarre to me. It's really bizarre to me that, I don't know if people are thinking about it that deeply, but you want to protect your child, but you are helping your child take the life in a premeditated homicide, which, people get sticky when you call the word murder, but let's just throw it out there. And you're 12, in this particular situation, your 12-year-old cannot consent. So you are helping your 12-year-old murder their child and then your grandchild. And at the end of the day, that person is still a human being. They don't unexist. It doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't undo the trauma of what happened. And it just makes it so that you have transferred the act of aggression to an innocent person. But you guys, they don't want to think of him as a person. It's just really strange that a 12-year-old, assuming the story is true, would talk like this. And I don't doubt that a 12-year-old would talk like this. My niece is younger than 12, but when someone finally explained to her what abortion was, she was just like, that is evil. That is disgusting. That is so sad. Like, why would anyone do that? And that's really kind of the more accurate reaction that I would expect a pure child to have. Again, you live in California. There's so many women. I saw a video today with this woman just talking about she's knows women in the healthcare industry, women who would consider themselves to be pretty smart, who are just so deranged right now and worried about what happens if they have a miscarriage. Now, and people have said that to me this weekend, like in my comments and stuff. And I'm like, can you please point to me, cite a law? It's like, you talk to all these women who are dying from miscarriages. I'm like, I don't know how they can talk to me if they're not here anymore, but just weird things people are saying. But I'm like, cite a law that says that you cannot remove a deceased child from your womb. Cite a single law. They're like, you don't play games with me. Just talk to the women. I'm like, do your own research. I've done the research. That's why I know that you can't cite a state law that says you can't remove a dead fetus from your womb, because it doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. And every single pro-life law in the country has some kind of exception for the mother's life is in danger. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be clarifications where there's confusion, and maybe people shouldn't like try to clear up some stuff. But the reality of the situation is that people have been fear-mongering and creating confusion. And well, first of all, it's important to note that medical malpractice is not something that is unique to pro-life states, and it happens in every single state. People die in high numbers from medical malpractice every year. And doctors can make the wrong call. When women do have miscarriages, it is not the first instinct of the doctor to say, hey, let's do a D&C. This terrible thing has happened. Let's put you into surgery. No, most of the time they want to see if the baby will just naturally pass, because it is a surgical operation and they're going to have to scrape out the baby with that curette. And they don't want to have to put your body through that process if you're going to just pass the baby naturally. So they may give it a couple days. It's not always gonna be the doctor's first reaction or whatever. So there's confusion there for people. And the people are also confused because in the hospital, different things will be coded in billing under like abortion or whatever, but that doesn't mean that you were having an abortion. Like the law is really clear. I was watching a debate on TikTok and they were arguing about the definition of abortion, and someone's like, okay, well, let me use the legal definition like from Texas. And they're like, no, I don't want to use that. I want to use this definition. And I think they just want to use like the termination of a pregnancy or whatever. And it's like, and they had brought up Texas too. So it didn't make sense to me. It seemed really disingenuous to not want to use what Texas was using in the law if you're convinced that Texas law is killing people. And so they're like, no, I don't want to use that. I don't want to use that. I don't want to use that. But that's what's relevant here, because we are talking about what happens legally if you decide to take someone's life, without you having some kind of just cause, and it's written in the law. We're talking about like criminal codes. So why wouldn't you want to see how the law is defining an abortion and what they want to be criminalized? Because it's not a miscarriage that they want people to go to jail for. That's silly. And there was never going to be some kind of pregnant woman registry. That was always a lie. Trump never wanted to do that. That's not even in Project 2025. But they've been pushing this hysteria. And that's one reason why it's important for, Daily Wire and Black Tea and other folks to continue talking about this stuff, because people are scared. And it's sad that they're scared, because they're scared over nothing. They're scared over things that don't make sense, but they are afraid and they are hysterical. And my hope is that there's a lot of people whose minds start to be unwound after 2016. Brandon Straka, who's part of I think he founded the walkaway movement. He eventually realized that Trump wasn't mocking a disabled reporter. Someone had messaged him, and then he looked it up and he started seeing how Trump like mocks a bunch of different people. And he's like, oh my gosh, I don't think Trump was actually mocking someone's disability. And once he realized that CNN and all these other networks were lying to him about that, he started researching and realizing that he was lied to about a lot of things. So my sincere hope is that more people can, after they calm down, they can just start to look up these things themselves, and they will listen. And they will realize that Trump isn't going to drone his political opponents for who disagree with him, just because the Supreme Court apparently said that he has total immunity or whatever, which isn't the case. And even SNL, they did their whole shtick the other night was basically it was like sarcastic, like, we were with you the whole time, Trump, especially, because you have full immunity. And of course, presidents have immunity when they do things within their official capacity. You didn't see the police take Joe Biden to jail after droning a family, an aid worker and some kids and stuff. No, he's still the president in the White House, and nobody was held accountable for that. And I think that's gross that no one was held accountable for that. But of course, presidents have immunity. Obama didn't get in trouble for droning like someone at a wedding, we're droning Americans for selling guns to drug dealers for the Fast and Furious operation, So of course presidents have immunity. You're just mad that the Supreme Court spelled out something that should have been so freaking obvious to you. It doesn't mean that Trump is going to go cause a bloodbath and just get away with it. And all these people need to have fear over somebody who was already the president for 4 years. Just grow up a bit, man. But hopefully people will calm down and learn the truth. And that's why we're here still talking about this stuff. And we'll continue talking about this stuff. This is a funny clip. Charlemagne was blown away by all the minority support. Again, Charlemagne is the host of the Breakfast Club. And he was just amazed by the support.
What do you make of the demographics here? I mean, Trump got 1 out of every 3 voters of color.
No.
Yeah.
1 out of
33%.
No. Really? When you say color, you mean like black, brown, everything? Oh, well, I think that, people have different issues that they care about. And I think that there's nobody out there that's a single issue voter. I think some of this is a backlash to race and gender and identity politics. But man, most people, they just care about keeping food on their table and keeping a roof over their head. And I think sometimes people forget about that. I think that they forget about, the working class. And for whatever reason, Donald Trump speaks to the grievances of the working class in a real way. And I keep telling folks, people will forget what you did, they'll forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And when you go back to 2020, even though it was a pandemic and it was COVID,
Yeah.
people don't care. All they know is they got stimulus checks with his name on it, and that's what they remember. And so people think about that. When you have conversations with folks, they be like, yo, I remember how 2020 felt. And they think that they're going to feel that, in this next term.
Yeah, I mean, how do you explain? I mean, he obviously swept the battleground states. He drove up, turnout around the country in Republican areas, but he did much better than he had done before in places like Chicago, Brooklyn, Queens.
Yeah. It's possible for New Jersey to be a swing state eventually, guys. I mean, we'll see how this movement continues, but Democrats are in a lot of trouble. I mean, even right now there should have been more votes electorally for Trump because the Biden administration screwed up the census. So like Florida and Texas should have had like more electoral votes or whatever, to the point where because Ben Shapiro was talking about, like, there was a scenario where in the map where Trump could have won the popular vote but maybe still lost election electorally, and he could have possibly sued, and the Supreme Court would have to decide because the census should have allocated more electoral votes to like Florida and other places. But they should fight that out now anyway, or should have fought it out before. And that would have been really, really messy. But of course it was a landslide and Trump got like 312 electoral votes and just totally swept. But yeah, Texas, people are like, oh, Texas is gonna go blue, Texas is gonna go blue, eventually it's gonna go blue. Texas was so red. Oh, Oklahoma's completely red. Michigan, Trump killed it. And Wisconsin and all these places went, so like there was no state where Kamala Harris outperformed Joe Biden. And there was very few counties where she outperformed him either. Places were remarkably red. And it's a reflection on the radical left. People just want to blame Kamala, and she is a uniquely bad candidate. She can't speak well, and like I said, she just doesn't have that it factor, and she rambles a lot about, what are you going to do for the middle? What are you going to do for the America and the economy? And she goes on like a 4-minute rant about how, she liked taking care of her lawn, and she had a second mom and all this kind of garbage. She couldn't be direct with answering stuff. She didn't have good explanations for her past views. She was uniquely a terrible candidate, and that laugh, just bad on so many different fronts. But really, she was too radical, and she couldn't run away from that. And we know that because of the clips and what ended up in ads. There was things that ended up in ads, like, when she talked to Sonny on The View, and they're like, what would you do different from Joe Biden? She's like, nothing comes to mind. People use that. That was a really bad moment for her, really bad. And it's amazing that Sonny herself says she ran a flawless campaign, when Sonny asked her a very simple question that led to her demise, but that wasn't the only thing. But a lot of things that people used for Kamala Harris were things that she said in 2019. That Dave McCormick, who won in the Senate, he would run a killer campaign. His ads were fire, and people kept saying like, Trump needs to have ads like this. But he ran great ads. Most of the stuff that I use for my 50 reasons video to not vote for Kamala Harris was stuff that she said during that campaign. There was a lot of video. She ran to the left on so many things, and she could not fight her way out of that. And the country's sick of it. The country is sick of it. So I'm being so surprised. Now, Charlemagne, though, he see like, well, people will forget what you said, that they'll remember how they feel. And Charlemagne is very convinced that Donald Trump is such a bad guy, and he said so many terrible things, and he's a racist. Like Laura Trump went on the Breakfast Club and talked about how Trump isn't a racist, and she really did school them. I thought it was going to be a catastrophe, but she did a great job. So, egg on my face. She did a great job. But then Breakfast Club cut clips in a clip that they had of that conversation of Donald Trump, of her claiming Trump isn't a racist. And then he's like, don't you remember or whatever? And then they added like different things that had nothing to do with racism or whatever. So they have an opinion of Trump that just isn't true, that just isn't real, or it's not valid. Like a lot of people have different opinions, but they're not valid. Like a friend of mine online was just like, oh, all these LGBT people, they're really upset. And Trump has said so many things and done so many things. And another friend of my page was just like, okay, just name the things that Trump has said, name the things that Trump has done. And we're like, yeah, just name the things that he said, like post the clips or whatever. And he's like, and he eventually said, well, I'm not going to post anything and waste my time because you guys are going to just, defend Trump no matter what. And so I had said, you don't have to do any character assassination attempts on me. Like, it's just what you said just factually is not true about me. But if you don't want to defend your claim, it is what it is. I don't need to argue with people all day on the internet about it. But if I said, hey, Kamala Harris is a religious bigot, I could list you thing after thing after thing immediately. If I said, hey, Kamala Harris wants to take away your guns, I could list something immediately, one after another, at the top of my head. And it would take me a few seconds to go on Twitter and find stuff that I've bookmarked or just I know what keywords to put in to find certain things. And I have things in my other computer that I'm not on right now, saved that I could pull up and play. So when people say, well, Trump did all these terrible things, but you don't have the facts to back it up. And then they'll say things like, oh, well, Donald Trump, he wrote that article condemning and wanting the Central Park 5 to be executed. And I'm just like, you've never read that article. You've never read that article. If that's what you think. And you don't know much about the case either. I'm sorry that you watched something on Netflix and you think you're an expert because there's a fictitious version of that story. But you don't know the facts. You don't know the facts. But people are so convinced of stuff, man. Let me play this clip from 16 Minutes that talks about this particular ad that I talked about earlier. Now, I don't like playing stuff for 60 Minutes because CBS are very, I don't know, they might flag me, but I don't think we'll get flagged live on streaming.
They thought they would do better with women. They did not. They thought that the abortion issue would drive more people to the Harris side. It did not.
Another part of Harris's shortfall came after an advertising blitz targeting her support for transgender rights. Republicans spent $143 million
Perfect
on the
imagery.
transgender campaign
Perfect imagery.
to cast Democrats as out of touch.
The party as a whole.
Let me just I don't think she we're not gonna watch the rest because I don't think that person even added that great of a commentary after this, but Trump, he's normal, gonna do things for the middle class, but they're out of touch. And what's interesting about this, Kamala, is for them. It was so bold and great. Like I thought it was great when they ran it, when I first saw it. But Kamala, that Sam Britton or Benton or oh gosh, what's his name? But this was a guy who was in the Biden-Harris administration, and he would steal luggage from women, and then wear their luggage, wear their dresses and stuff, and maybe their underwear. I don't know, but he would take their clothes and he would wear them. And then this other person is our assistant health secretary. So these are not. It's not like these are, I don't know, somebody who's some kind of activist who maybe they invited to the White House one afternoon. These are people who had their hands on power. And I don't know how much people know that just from seeing a quick ad or whatever, but this imagery of this grown man playing with these girls. perfect. It was such a good ad to show how utterly out of touch they were. And Kamala, she was out of touch, sure, but so are the people who, still pushed and backed her. There was trying to find the clip. There was someone who was so upset and thought that said that calling a boy in a girl's sport was a slur. And I've got to find it for you guys. But it just really goes to show you that it's really not just about her. It's about these people that she represents, that she's a part of this class is like really out of touch. And I saw a clip of Stephen A. Smith talking about this on The View, and Sonny was like, it's just 1% of the population, trying to downplay why do they care? Why are they focusing in on this if they're just 1% of the population? And I find that to be such a dishonest take. And the reason why it's such a dishonest take is because, yeah, they are 1% of the population. So why are the Democrats so obsessed with them? Why are the Democrats so obsessed with the trans community? There's a lot of people who are gay and bi, lesbians, and so on, who do not want to be attached to the T. Who don't. They don't. Okay? Why is there so much focus on the T? Why? They're 1% of the population. So why is it that we have to now say that men can get pregnant? Why do we have to say that men can have periods? Why is that a push if they're just 1%? Why is it so that they want Leah Thomas and other people in sports to be able to play in women's sports and go to their bathrooms and their spas and their shelters if it's just 1% of the population? Why? Why is everyone forced to comply, to capitulate to their delusions? You can't help how you feel. And my heart breaks for people who feel so out of touch in their own body. That would be awful. But what you decide to do, you can help. And if you decide that you want to alter your body and your appearance and live how you want to live, that is a decision that you can make. But you cannot expect everyone else to alter reality for your self-perception. And once you try to force people to do that, once you have the Biden-Harris administration talking about, making adjustments to Title IX and FDA and making it so that their school lunches will be threatened, that schools' funding will be threatened. Once you start doing stuff like that, it's not just a matter of your healthcare and your perspective. You are trying to impose your will upon other people. And they're not okay with that. I saw TikTok not too long ago. And someone's like, and there was a trans person. They're like, why do you guys care so much about us? And why is there such a focus on us? And I'm like, why do we even know that you're trans? Because this is a person who looked like they passed decently, I guess. I'm like, we know because you told us. We know because that's you're not trying to pass and just live your life. You're creating a platform off of the fact that you've transitioned. So you are trans. We know that you are not a woman because you told us. Point blank. So why now should I pretend otherwise when I know the truth? Because you told me. You wanted your attention. Here it is. Congratulations. But this party that says, oh, women's rights, oh my gosh, that are too chicken to even define what a woman is. Yeah, it's just 1%. So why are we all held hostage? Why are we all held hostage? It doesn't make any sense. I hope it was worth losing the election over. I know that it wasn't, but it is what it is. I know that it wasn't, but it is what it is. You made your mistake. Let me see. want to show you guys this video of this guy going crazy. Here we go.
I think there are a lot of families out there who don't believe boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys.
no,
I'm
no,
not
no,
going to listen
no,
to
no,
transphobia
no,
at this
that's
table.
not-
I am
that's
not
not-
going
that's
to
not
listen
the point
to
that
you
I'm-
call a
Can
trans
you-
girl a boy.
Are you
That
gonna
is
allow
just
me to
not
finish my
gonna-
explanation?
No,
Are you
when you
gonna
use
tell
a
me
word
how?
that's a slur, I'm going to interrupt.
How is
That's
it a
not
slur?
how it is.
Jay, just
They're
give me-
not
just give me-
boys. They're
Jay,
not
give me
boys.
1
They're not
second.
playing
Just-
girls
let's just
softball.
reset for
I'm
one.
not going to sit there
Let's
and
reset
listen
for
to
a
that.
second because look, this is a really heated issue,
Mhm.
right? And Michael, I know you. I know that you understand that people have different views on this. I think out of respect for Jay, like, let's try to talk about this in a way that is respectful.
Okay, so let me rephrase this since I'm being targeted here.
I don't,
There-
you're
no,
not,
no,
just
it's
to be clear,
okay.
you are not being
But I
targeted.
am, but it's okay.
I'm specifically
it's okay.
saying that I know that you are not intending to be transphobic.
He should know that I'm not.
But
he wants to
I
sit
want
here
I'm
you-
not calling you
bloviate and
transphobic.
But I
I'm
want
saying
you
you're
to-
using
I
a
want-
phrase
I wanna
that
give
you
you an
know.
opportunity
So the way regular
reframe.
people interpret it,
That's not
which is why
regular
those
people.
ads were
That's not
effective.
regular people. There's no consensus that these are actually boys. This whole thing about trans girls is a canard. We're talking about a tiny, tiny sliver of the population,
That may be the
and we're
case,
using
but
that
my point in
to take
terms of
away
its
healthcare from
effectiveness.
thousands
Just
of
get,
people.
hold on, just get to your point.
My point in terms of its effectiveness: regular people with children.
Yeah. So now saying that a boy is a slur because they think that they're a girl. So if you say no, the boy's a boy, that's a slur. That's a slur, and you're being homophobic. I mean, I'm sorry, transphobic, not homophobic. He's like, I'm not gonna sit here and listen to it. And they're telling this Republican that we know you don't mean to be transphobic by using the word boy. Meh. Can we just use some different language to be respectful? Don't give me that. Oh, it's just 1% nonsense. Why do we all have to be held captive to this insanity? Why? Why? You're like, you're picking on this group. Why are you using this group? Why? Why? I'm not just a person with a uterus. I'm a woman. I'm a woman. They're trying to change language and all kinds of different stuff. I am a woman. And it's funny. People like, you're pushing your beliefs on people. They are pushing their beliefs on people. And a man can't even say that a boy is a boy. Like, to say, hey, they're having a totally normal conversation on CNN. It's CNN, guys. Supposed to be like a super mainstream channel that they put on their reports and stuff. And this guy says, hey, there's parents out there who don't want their girls playing with boys and the boys being in their locker room. And that guy goes nuts and says, you're being transphobic. You know that's a slur. Where do you go from there? Again, Kamala Harris was a uniquely terrible candidate, but she represented the perspective of that man who just went off. Now, she actually tried to like kind of lean away from it a bit, especially once they were aware how effective those ads were. But you can't run away from all the things you did on record, ma'am. We have all the video. It's too late. It's too late. It's too late. So we talked a lot about the election. There's more clips I'm sure I want to show you guys, but let's move on a little bit. I want to talk about our new board czar, Tom Homan. And you guys have probably seen these clips before. This is like a 4-minute kind of, I think this one is a compilation video, but I don't know if we'll see it all, but I'm sure you guys have seen this man around, and women on The View are flipping out because they're like, Trump said he was going to do mass deportation. I know people didn't think that he was going to do it, but he's going to do it. I kind of I don't expect Trump to deport 12 million people. Okay. If he did do that, I'd be pleasantly surprised, I guess. And people are saying like, oh, well, you guys, there's not enough criminals for him to deport it to be the largest deportation in history. He's going to deport grandmothers. He's going to deport this person, that person, that person. Think about all the people who are coming here claiming to seek asylum. You see those hordes of men, men who are old enough to work, and they're not with families. Some people might come with families or whatever, but they're single men coming across our border. And not all of them maybe to do mischief. Maybe some of them should just work and take advantage of the opportunities in America. And I could respect it if they weren't, treating our asylum process like a joke and so on. So I can understand people wanting to come to the US. I can totally understand it, but you got to do it the right way. And so if those people get deported, it is what it is. You shouldn't have come here. And people are also pointing out you do not have to just put people on a plane and send them back home, which people act like that's the most evil thing ever. At least they're not going to jail forever for crossing our border illegally. They got a free trip back home. I saw somebody do a video today like, I'm an illegal alien. I'm very concerned that they're going to send me back home. And then he just started showing like beach places, and I think the Maldives or whatever. He's like, this is where I live. This is where I'm from. Like, please don't send me back here. My address is such and such, such and such. So there's jokes coming out of all of this now. But if they, tax remittance, put like heavy fees, when people send money back overseas, which there's people who pay into the country and do jobs, and they'll say they pay all their they pay taxes and all this stuff. And so that's why we need to give them amnesty. But a lot of these people send money out of our country to family and friends that they have in other countries. So there's a large chunk of our money that's like the economy of other countries, to be frank. So if you really start taxing those fees, taxing those and taking money out of that, if you start cutting off different benefits that we give to, people who are here illegally, you're going to see people just leave as well, I don't know how many people will just leave because America's still a good place that you want to be in anyway, but you can't make it so easy for people to stay and take advantage of our system. You just can't. You just can't. It's not right. Don't incentivize the bad behavior.
First of all, your comments are disgusting. I've served my country.
I've served my country for 34 years.
I find your comments
This is out of
disgusting
control.
as well.
I've served my country for 34 years. And yes, I held a 5-year-old boy in my arms in back of that tractor trailer. I knelt down beside him and said a prayer for him because I knew what his last 30 minutes of his life were like. And I had a 5-year-old son at the time. What I've been trying to do my 34 years serving my nation is to save lives. So for you to sit there and insult my integrity and my love for my country and for children, that's why this whole thing needs to be fixed. And you're the member of Congress.
We agree on that.
Fix it.
We agree on that, but I disagree.
But I also
disagree with your characterization of immigrants as prone to criminality.
People for 3 decades on this.
Gentlemen, time is.
Look, you want to know why there's 50,000 people in detention? You want to know why we have 1 million illegal entries in the United States? You want to know why we have these issues? Because you have failed to secure the border. You have failed to work with this president to close the 3 loopholes we've asked for 2 years to close. So if you want to know why this issue exists, you need to look in the mirror. You have failed American people for not securing the border and closing loopholes.
Mr. Holman,
Look,
please respect the chair and the authority of the chair. The time of the gentleman has expired.
I've asked you politely to let me go beyond my time, and you let other people go beyond their time, but not to Tom Holman. He don't get me go beyond his time.
Mr. Holman, we have approved an agreement between the Republicans and the Democrats with the ranking member. We increased the time of one member of Congress who was interrupted by a protest. That is done with the approval of the ranking member. Please respect the chair's authority.
I respect the chair's authority, but the chair.
Mr. Holman,
you work for me. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer. You work for me.
So the recommendation of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommend zero tolerance,
which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm gonna be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father
Mr.
from his
Holman, with
family.
all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum and go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
Okay.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together. You better start packing now.
Yeah, so you get the gist. You get the gist with this guy. So yeah, he's our new border czar. Far different than Kamala Harris. Like, don't come. Yeah, they came. So to his point about the mass the separation of the families and stuff, there were people who were coming over, who were bringing kids over, and they did not have a relation to them. And the Trump administration was doing like rapid DNA tests like on site, and if you didn't have a relation, they were going to separate you. But I'm thinking about, there was a pro-lifer who was arrested and for violating the FACE Act and stuff, and she's serving, I think, I want to say maybe 3.5 years or something. She separated from her family. She separated from her family, which I hope that she gets one of the first pardons from President Trump and gets out of there and gets back to her family, because they wanted to make an example out of her. But you can, not like what she did or whatever, but the truth, they still separate families. American families, when you do something wrong or break the law, your child does not go to jail with you, and you cannot just stay out of prison because you have a child. People are separated from their children all the time. So people need to stop, frankly, risking the lives of their children, bringing them over here on a dangerous journey where all sorts of terrible things happen to those children or can happen to those children. It's not safe. It's not safe, and they're being disrespectful to our laws. So we have to stop encouraging bad behavior. So if Trump is going to be far more serious about this, then, I know he really tried in the past, but it seems like they're coming in with a new focus about this, and he knows his way around Washington better than he did the first time. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, they can make some long-term changes, because if they don't, we could get back into the situation anyway, next time a Democrat comes in office. But hopefully, because Trump had such a decisive victory, Democrats will snap back to a time where they had some sense on the border. Go back and listen to Hillary Clinton and Democrats talk about the border in the past, or a lot of these issues. They were not as insane about stuff in the past with these issues. Just go back and listen when she was running against Obama, or back to 2008 and other stuff like that. They were making sense in the past with this. They weren't for like the open border, whatever. And I don't want our side, by the way, to push amnesty at all. We should not be encouraging bad behavior. There's some issues and concerns about different people running for to take over Mitch McConnell's position in the Senate, because Mitch McConnell, of course, he's very old, and he had the whole like freeze up situation, and he can't be in leadership anymore. He really shouldn't. He should just be retired. And he's done a great service for some stuff, and other reasons, people don't like Mitch McConnell, but there's got to be someone new stepping in. I'm going to play a clip from Dana Lash about some of these concerns, because I share some of these concerns. So she's going to just sum up some of them. So there's 3 names that are floating around. There's more than obviously 3 senators, but there's 3 names popping up, and I'm not crazy about any of them, to be frank.
John Thune he seems like a nice guy, but that's not what I look at. He's a squish. Look at his record. His record as to liberty, you would be on academic probation with a rating like that as a grade. Right? So you've got John Cornyn, who's a gun control guy, and who also worked with amnesty. And yes, if you are compromising any part of securing the border, that's amnesty. We're not going to do this whole, well, they're only a little pregnant. You're either for the border or you're not. Just like you're either for the Second Amendment or you're not. You're not.
So John Cornyn, in case you guys recall, or don't recall rather, when there was that bipartisan like gun legislation that Biden had, Cornyn was one of those people, one of the squishes that made it happen. And I remember, at least on Twitter, man, the right being so mad, and Tim Pool was just like, I'm going to do what I can to destroy this guy and get him primaried or whatever. And I don't know where all the energy kind of went. I don't know what he might be saying right now. I haven't looked at Tim's feed, but people were so mad about Cornyn and compromising with what they did. And, you know, I don't want to squish with these issues. I want someone who's going to take our Second Amendment rights seriously. I want someone who's going to take and due process and all that stuff seriously as well. I want someone who is not going to be squishy with the border. I don't want there to be amnesty for people. Like, even if you don't want to eject everyone from the country, that still doesn't mean that you have to make them a citizen after they disobeyed our laws. No, don't reward the bad behavior. Don't do it. Don't do it. So I'm a no on the Cornyn situation, and I don't. She's gonna get to Rick Scott too, but
not a little pregnant. You're not a little for the Second Amendment. You're for it or you're not. You're for the Fourth Amendment or you're not. You're for the Fifth Amendment or you're not. You're for due process or you're not. There's none of this halfway nonsense. So that brings us to Rick Scott. What do you want to know about Rick Scott that I haven't already told you? After Parkland, which I remember well, because I was at the town hall on stage arguing with Jake Tapper and CNN and bad cop Scott Israel. I was there watching as some of the people in the Senate, Republicans, were getting ready to sign our rights away so that they could satisfy the screams for do something that mostly came from activists. I watched Marco Rubio collapse rhetorically on stage in front of me 5 minutes before I had to walk out. He gave the crowd everything, and then I had to go out and take it all away. So I remember. And I remember Rick Scott, as governor of Florida, signed a comprehensive gun control bill into effect that raised the minimum age of purchase, instituted a waiting period, and destroyed your due process. Why is that bad? Let me start from the beginning. We're going to go in the weeds a little bit because you need to. I know you're tired. You just had an election last week. You can hang on till Thanksgiving because we got to. The future of the country depends on it.
She starts talking, but this clip's going to cut off. I recommend, I guess, people go, watch her talk about the stuff with Rick Scott. But Rick Scott, he was a squish on the abortion issue, an abortion amendment in Florida, and just kind of let me know that he was more comfortable with the 15 weeks rather than this with the heartbeat bill that DeSantis did. And I didn't appreciate that. I appreciate Ron DeSantis so much for going out there and fighting to kill Amendment 3 and Amendment 4 and speaking to people and standing up for what he signed and doing his best to protect life. Appreciate everyone who went out there and did something about it and supported and talked about it. And I've talked a lot about Florida's law. To me, it makes me really more pro-life and uncompromising with people. And people always say, you need to find the nuance and stuff. The fact that there's so many people on the left who dislike Florida's law tells me that there's kind of no point in compromising because there's already so many compromises. And at the end of the day, it's still not enough. They have life of the mother. They have, which is fine. bodily injury, they have fetal abnormality, and that doesn't mean that your baby isn't born with a brain, they're going to die shortly after birth. That could mean your child has Down syndrome. They have rape and incest, and if you're trafficked, they have so many things that's covered, but they just say when there's a heartbeat, you can't kill the baby. And then people will turn around and say, oh, all these compromises sound good, except I think it should be later. And I'm like, later for what? You don't deserve more time to kill your child for any reason that you want. You just don't deserve it, guys. You don't deserve it. I already mentioned today that gestational limitations, like picking and choosing, like what week enough you're developed enough to not be killed, doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. You're the same person throughout the whole entire time your life began at conception. I understand you're trying to pick and choose at a time where you've convinced yourself that it's morally acceptable to do this, but again, it's the same human being the whole entire time. And if we're going to have compromises, they should be based on reasons, not gestational age limits. So you got all these different reasons that's acceptable for you to have an abortion, and it's any reason that's basically outside of your control. And it's still not enough. And once people started like pushing back against me, like, well, I still think they need more time. I'm like, there's a fundamental like issue here that's wrong with people's thinking that I guess people need to address. But that's already a lot of compromises on the pro-life side, man. That's already a lot of compromises. And people are like, well, what about 15 weeks? You might as well just have no limitations if you're going to go all the way to 15 weeks. Most of the abortions happen prior to that anyway. and you know how to develop a baby is by the end of the first trimester? Anyway, Scott didn't back DeSantis on that. He didn't back the heartbeat bill. And I'm not too fond of Scott. Plus, when he was like the head of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, they raised a lot and burned through a lot, and we did not have the red wave that we were supposed to have. So I'm concerned about his actual leadership skills within the Senate. I don't know if he can be another, boss man like Mitch McConnell was anyway. I just don't see the evidence of him being the right person for this job, on top of the issues that she laid out and the issue that I laid out. I don't know or feel confident that he'd be the person best suited for this job when he already failed the Senate, Republican Senate, on a national stage. So I don't know who would be the best for it, because like I can say I want, a good senator who's going to do the right thing on the issues of liberty. But the fact of the matter is you have to find someone who's going to be able to push legislation and maybe reach across the aisle and set agendas and get along with a lot of different folks and, find compromises, but also raise money to make sure that you keep a majority or grow your majority if you can. So people might want to say Mike Lee, or I've seen people say Rand Paul, but Rand Paul's not going to happen, guys. So anyway, we have 3 choices right now. It seems we have more senators. I don't know why more people kind of aren't up for grabs, in the conversation, but I'm going to assume it's probably going to be Rick Scott, because I know I heard Elon is pushing it. I see Charlie Kirk really pushing it. And I don't know. I just hope that they do better than in past performances. And we do not want amnesty. Trump actually floated amnesty back when he was president before. And so that wasn't mentioned enough during the primary, but it is what it is. I hope that is not a route that they seriously go for any kind of compromise on bills with the Democrats. Do not disincentivize bad behavior. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm not saying if you got to necessarily kick everybody out, okay, because they are going to focus on like people who are really, doing criminal things and so on, and they'll look them up and put people out or whatever. And if you've been here for a while and you've been good, whatnot, that doesn't mean that you should automatically get to become a citizen. By all means, I guess you can keep paying taxes into the system and contributing, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get the privileges of being a citizen. That doesn't mean that you should get privileges of any kind of benefits or whatever. You made the choice to come here and not do it legally, so reap those rewards. So if I sound harsh, I just sound harsh, but I don't think I'm harsh. I think I'm obviously in line with much of the country on the issue as far as the border. If we keep incentivizing bad behavior, people will continue to come. I mean, people are going to continue to come anyway, because again, America's a great place. But stop incentivizing bad behavior. Stop rewarding bad behavior. Please, please do better. And so yeah, Trump is continuing to staff up his cabinet. He put out a video a couple days ago about how he's going to make it so, do an executive order on making it so that the government cannot collude or force like social media companies to do stuff with misinformation, disinformation, and that he's going to fire people who've engaged in that. That made me really excited. So we'll see what happens there. We're pretty late into this, way over our hour. We didn't even get to talk about the Daily Wire story that broke about how FEMA, you guys can look this up. I promise we will talk about this tomorrow. But FEMA was skipping over people with Trump signs in their houses. So they skipped over at least like 20 people during the midst of needing help after a hurricane. And it's funny because CBS or whatever, Daily Wire dropped the story. And when other people are reporting it, like in mainstream media, they have a picture that they're using of a woman, a white woman, but there wasn't a white woman who did it. It was a black woman. So I don't know what's up with that. I don't know if they want people to think that the wrong person was responsible for that, because a lot of people don't click past the headline. But this is a very serious thing. The woman was let go. I don't know if she's going to be criminally prosecuted or whatever. But this is the sort of thing that I would really like to see the Biden administration come out strongly against, because this is one thing that is so terrible. The reaction from people when I started reporting it, because I posted it on my Facebook, people were saying this can't be true. And unfortunately, it was true. And then FEMA went ahead and confirmed it. And Trump had said during the midst of the hurricane that there were people who were Republicans who weren't getting the help that they needed. And that the New York Times, the people were saying that was a conspiracy. And once again, Trump was freaking right. People were reporting and talking about how they couldn't get aid and other stuff. And now we know there was a purposeful plan to leave people out in the cold just because they think differently or voting differently than you. It's insane. But I told people, I said, you shouldn't be surprised, because when Obama was president, you had the whole IRS scandal where they were trying to not reward people for nonprofit status if they had things that I guess were kind of like Tea Party or Republican or conservative. So if you had like Patriot in your name or something, you probably were not going to get approved for like a nonprofit status. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that happened during that time, and we just see an echo of that because people are so deranged that they feel justified in discriminating against people who think differently than them. And it's sad, but that's sort of what leadership that Obama and Biden and them have inspired, unfortunately. I mean, when you keep saying that Trump is a threat to democracy and he's basically a Nazi, that means his supporters are supporting Nazis, and people feel entitled and empowered to treat people so terribly. The last thing I want to mention before I go, I'll let you guys go, is that you guys know I'm an author. Some of my books behind me, and posters and actual like physical copies or whatever. But on Book Talk, it's just, the algorithm of different authors talking about books and whatever, and different readers sharing their love of reading and so on. There were some authors who were saying, unfollow me if you voted for Trump. There are people talking about making lists of authors and different people in the book community who they thought voted for Trump. And it was so toxic. And it's awesome. My author friends on Facebook talk about it. And I saw videos where people saying like we need some kind of common ground where people can escape from like all this drama of politics, and this needs to be a safe space. And there's so many times I've gone to conventions and people have come up to me and started, saying things where I could easily gather that they thought differently than me on politics. And I never like get into a debate with people or whatever. It's, you're a person, I'm a person, we have like interest in this regard. I hope you like my story. Obviously I want to make a sale, but hopefully the story and the values that I have in this is something that you're going to resonate with, even though we see things differently politically. And there was only one time I could think of where I actually pushed back on someone, and it wasn't like hard or whatever, but it was in Chicago, and someone was like, but they like invited me to speak somewhere solely because I was a Black woman selling stuff. They know anything else about me, and they started talking about the patriarchy and how women are oppressed or whatever. And it was a gay guy who was like had a trail of glitter behind him. I'm not exaggerating. And he like went on a long speech. And then after that, I was like, well, I really don't feel like, I am oppressed by the patriarchy. And then he got so offended and then just wouldn't even let me get another word in. And then he's like, I'm going to go, but you are oppressed by the patriarchy. And it's just funny, like having a man tell me that and not even allowing me to speak and just kind of flutter away, with a trail of glitter in his wake. And I was, trying to make money with my youngest sister is there with me. And I just turned to her and I said, I don't have time to be oppressed. And I just continued trying to make my sales, So that's the only time that I ever like pushed back in some kind of conversation. It wasn't forceful or whatever. I was still smiling or whatever. I was just like, I don't feel like I'm oppressed by a patriarchy. And he just, kind of blew up on me. But other than that, we just have an exchange of ideas. Hopefully you like my story. And I think we do need to have some safe spaces of entertainment or whatever. And I'm not saying that people can't make things that are political or whatever, have some kind of message, but it's just tough when people like try to beat someone over the head and it just goes woke or whatever. Like, but people can tell their stories and we can debate and we could, enjoy, but you just have to tell the story well and people will appreciate it. There's plenty of people that I watch, there's TV shows and I appreciate their work or whatever. I read stuff from people I disagree with, and that's fine. But there are times when it goes too far. Like I really won't consume Disney stuff. And I haven't for a minute. The last Disney thing that I watched was actually WandaVision. I haven't I guess I've seen a lot of clips and stuff online of different stuff, but I haven't gone to the movies and I haven't turned on Disney Plus to watch, Wish or, the new Guardians of the Galaxy. I haven't seen any of that stuff since WandaVision because I just made a decision. It was Eric July who said you shouldn't give more than 50% of your money to people who hate you. And I'm like, that is actually really true. And when it comes to Disney, I feel like they deeply resent me, my upbringing, my family. And I'm not saying everybody who works there feels that way, but that's the general sort of feeling that I get from the company where they're like, we want to trigger the fans. And, they changed the logo of the Punisher, the skull face, to something like look kind of more piratey, and because they didn't like that there are people online taking that logo and incorporating it for like the blue line, like pro police thing. For some reason, people were doing that, and they just didn't like how they took their logo to support the police. So they just changed the Punisher's logo. I'm like, how much do you hate the police that you changed your own logo? And so that's just an example. So I don't want to make people feel that way. The way that Disney and other corporations make people feel, like you can disagree, but just to hate the fans and resent the people who made you money and made you all that you are, I just hate that. So I think it is important that people come together and watch stuff and enjoy it and love it. And people should not be about politics 24/7. And I guarantee you that people who actually work in politics, they're friends with people across the aisle. I know because my sister worked on the campaign, and when it was Labor Day, she was at a barbecue over a friend's house, and they had people who worked for the Harris campaign who were, you know, at DNC and stuff, who were there hanging out. They were just like, we're not going to talk about shop while we're here. They talked about other stuff. And when I went to a Democrat Party picnic, they didn't know I was Republican or whatever. We talked about lots of different things. You know, there were things that they said that I disagreed with, but we cared about our families. We cared about communities, and, you know, our families, our friends. We had like interests, you know. There are people who asked about my books. I'm like, well, they're going to be able to find me out quickly if they could do some digging on this immediately. But, you know, we can meet in the middle and we can discuss things. But if you just hate the other person and you resent them so deeply, your bias is going to cloud your judgment to a point where you get a result where that you totally don't understand where the rest of the country is. And you are screaming on TikTok, just crying and you're worried about how your 12-year-old's not going to be able to get an abortion after being raped in California. Just nonsense. And we just don't want people to be at that point. So take a chill pill and relax and get some perspective. Have a calm conversation with someone you disagree with and try to understand them. Try to empathize with them instead of just, you know, they're all racist, sexist, homophobic, and misogynist and so on. Yada, yada, yada. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Another long show. But we haven't talked in a while and a lot has obviously happened. Anyway, I saw PJ he got here not too long ago, but I gotta go. Kind of late into things. Yeah, thank you guys for joining me live today. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost to stream and run and all that stuff so you guys can support. I appreciate it. Please check out different merch that's available, like this I'm Not the Victim That You're Looking For t-shirt. I did meet I don't know if the husband was a fan, but there was someone who sent their husband to come to meet me at Comic-Con, and they wanted Slay Your Fear. They got Slay Your Fear, but that's one of the abortion book, but I didn't have it in stock. But he was really sweet, and I couldn't meet the wife because the kids were sick. But I so appreciate there's you coming out or your husband coming out and getting the book and stuff. And there are other people who I've known through the years who were there, who knew I was a Republican, who came by and was like, oh, congratulations on the result. And there were some artists that I knew that were there that were Republican and stuff just from, you know, time talking. So I had fun. You know, there was somebody who was actually walking around in a Make America Great Again hoodie. So I like called him over the table. I was like, I like your hoodie. And he said he had reservations about wearing it because obviously the election just happened and, you know, a lot of people were going to be upset. And he said he definitely got some like negative looks and stuff, but there were a lot of people who gave him compliments on the hoodie and stuff. So he said that, you know, people, you know, saying kind words, he's like that really made it worth it and stuff. So we had you know, good conversation, you know, with him and so on. So, you know, if you were been like quiet you know, about the Trump stuff or just having normal views, maybe you don't even like Trump, but he's just your guy because he's your vehicle right now. They've talked a lot about the silent majority with Trump and the voter, and that was a rhetoric that was pushed throughout 2016 and so on, etc. And now it is a thing. Like, it's unquestionably a thing that a lot of people found out that there is a silent majority, or there was a silent majority, and the country is remarkably red right now, and it's getting redder. All the gains that the Democrats thought that they had in Texas, they saw them wiped out. And, you know, Trump didn't lose New Jersey and Illinois or Wisconsin, not Wisconsin, he won Wisconsin, Minnesota by that much. And Harris lost Florida by more than he lost New York. So, and he gained in Minnesota and in California, where Walz was the governor of Minnesota, and you know, she's from California. So he just killed it. And so much of it has nothing to do with him, but it's just the return of the normies, you know, having their voice heard. So you are seen, and to the people who are on the other side of the aisle, you know, let's have a conversation. because I'm sure that there's more that we have in common than what actually separates us. And a lot of the things that you probably believe are not true because, frankly, this was Kamala Harris ran the most lioness campaign I've ever seen in my life. So please, you know, I don't want to say do your research in a condescending kind of way that, you know, I like do your research, but please actually, you know, do some research on some stuff. Again, I have debunk, you know, top 10 Trump hoaxes. Start there. It's on YouTube. Check it out. You know, take the time to make it. It's pretty extensive. But anyway, thank you so much. Lasha said, I feel so safe now as a Black woman. You know, I wish there was more Black women who had supported Trump, but I don't know if you're getting it, man, from lefties. They try. It is amazing how racist and sexist, you know, they've become all of a sudden. It's not all of a sudden how much they're revealing through their loss. But you stay strong, girl. You stay strong. Anyway, God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. You guys can check out my books and stuff. There's a link in the description. It'll take you to like an Amazon page or whatever where you can check out my stuff. And I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.